Well, welcome back to New York Talk. This is the Scouting Report where we look at our next opposition, and it's Plymouth Argyle. We have Joe joining us from Argyle Life. How are you doing, mate?
Yeah, good, Matt. Thank you. Very happy to be here.
Good to speak to you. Good to be playing Plymouth again. I always enjoy playing Plymouth. Talk about your start to the season, because from the outside it feels like it's been fantastic, to be honest with you. Talk to me about life in the Championship.
Yeah, it's been okay. I mean, nothing's really surprised us about the league, about what's needed to win games in the league. Um, I think that's probably highlighted by the fact our home record and our away form are complete polar opposites to one another. We know how to get the job done at home, and away from home. Obviously, you need, whether it's the bounce of a ball or a little decision here or there, or something to go your way at this level. When you're, what are we? We're 24th budget in the league comfortably, I would imagine, as well. So every game we're going up against opposition who can pay better, afford better players than us. So you're always going to need that slice of luck. But there are certainly signs last night at QPR that perhaps that first away win isn't too far around the corner. We've actually got some of the bigger away games out of the way now, as well as we head into the second half of the season. But the home form's superb, and ultimately, I think it's probably going to have to be the backbone of our survival push is a strong home record. And 20 wins out of 23 last year was the backbone to the title win. So I'm not going to sit here and say we're going to finish on 20 home wins. That's now impossible. But we'll give it as good a go as we've got at home, and I'm sure we'll pick up a few results on the road. That's for sure.
You're at 23 points from 21 games. Obviously, coming to the halfway point, you're almost halfway to the magic. Oh, it won't be 50 points this season, I don't think, but you're almost halfway there. Is that better than you expected? Are you sort of on target, a bit better, a bit behind? Maybe where from where you've sort of started, where do you feel you are?
It'd be interesting to know whether the club feel like we're on target or not. I would say, I mean, they've got a points tally of 52 in their mind. Right. They want to get to 52 only because no team's ever been relegated with 52. So they're playing the percentages with that. I think it will probably be around the 45 mark. Maybe will be enough. So if you take it like that, then we're halfway there. I think we're probably value for a couple of points better than what we've already got. I think, certainly, as I say, we haven't won away from home, but there's only really been 2 games that we've not been in the game as a contest, really. And that was Bristol City, where we made 7 changes. And lo and behold, Leicester City at the weekend, where we made 6 changes, but we're not going to be the only side to go to the King Power this year and get a thumping. So we're probably on track. It's a shame that, you look at, I think we've lost to Southampton at home was a cruel defeat late in the day. And then we lost 2 in a week against Swansea and Millwall. The Millwall game was a real kick in the stones, because I think we had about 26, 27 shots that night. And I think Millwall only had about 4 or 5 and they scored 2. And Swansea, for an hour, we were okay. And then we just fell apart, really. Nobody can understand what happened in that game. It was just a freak outcome, but we're probably on target. If you offered us 18th place at the end of the season and 3 points above the relegation zone, I'd say there'd be a fair celebration going on the Barbican at the end of May. So the objective is to stay up. We're not kidding ourselves. We're not looking at anything other than a minimum of 21st place. Anything more than that really is a hugely successful season, even if at times we have played better than some of the teams who are currently above us. You've got to be realistic and play the long game, I think, haven't you?
Absolutely. I completely agree. Let's talk about your manager, Stephen Schumacher. He seems to be very, very high. He's done a great job with you guys. Just talk to me a bit about him and the job that he has done, and how high can he go himself, and how high do you think he can take you guys?
It's an interesting one. I mean, I personally think he's got the world at his feet. I'm not going to sit here and make a big claim that he's going to manage in the Champions League or manage England. You can't predict those things. I do think he is capable of taking, probably get pelters for this, a bigger job than Argyle. Obviously, where we are in terms of our geographical position, this is the biggest job he can have. I do think he can go higher. Obviously, I'd love it to be with us, but I think, you know, again, you've got to be realistic, feet on the ground, sort of thing. The important thing for Shuey really is that the owner stresses this at every fans forum and every time he's asked to talk about Shuey, is that he's got a clean slate with Argyle. You know, the board have total trust in him, and he can make mistakes. He made a mistake in the Bristol City game, making 7 changes, completely changed the side. That's our derby this year. And within 7 minutes, we were 2-0 down. The ball had only been in play for 3 minutes, and we touched the ball 6 times, and 2 of them were kickoffs. You know, we'd barely got a foot in the door, and we were 2-0 down on that night. And he made a mistake that night. He's made mistakes with various selections and things across the season. He made mistakes last year, would you believe, with 101 points. But that's the key thing, is that at Argyle, he can progress and develop at his own speed, make mistakes and not get punished for it. There was talk, I mean, it was only bookmaker talk, but he was put in as favourite for a couple of days last week to be Sunderland boss. That would have been completely the wrong thing for him, because if he goes to Sunderland and makes a mistake like he made that night against Bristol City, makes wholesale changes, gets beat by, say, Middlesbrough 5-0 later in the season, that's all he'll be remembered for. Or God forbid he went and lost the Newcastle game in the cup heavily. So he knows that, you know, you're only as good as your last game as a manager. He knows that he's got time. I think his contract here is until 2026. I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to see that out, because, as I say earlier, I do think he can go higher. But at the moment, what's he achieved? He's achieved a promotion as an assistant, almost got the most incredible playoff run on 81 points, and then he's gone and won a league title on 101 points. So he's got the entire city in the palm of his hand at the moment. And look, we're enjoying the journey, because he's down to earth. He's invested in the area. His family live in the area. He knows what it means. You know, he talked about it last night. The 0-0 draw there at QPR was for the 2,000 that packed that away end on a Wednesday night, 10 days before Christmas. You know, there aren't many clubs that have been able to do that, given the travelling that we do every week, especially given we took nearly 3,000 to Leicester on Saturday as well. So he knows what it is. He's bought into it, and, you know, long may his success at the club continue.
We'll talk about some players. I first of all have to ask about Mikael Miller, former Rotherham player. It was a popular Rotherham player, to be fair. How's he doing for you guys?
When he's fit, he's very good, Matt, and I think you'd probably probably testify to that yourself. I've warmed to Mikael Miller. I wasn't totally sold on him. Injury record aside, there were a couple of performances at the start of the season that were a little bit shaky, and I wasn't sure whether or not he'd be the man for that left side. You know, after the last couple of international breaks, he's really pushed on. He's a solid player. I mean, the one thing Mikael Miller can do is he can put one hell of a cross into the box. Yes. Now, unfortunately, we don't always have the strikers who are going to get on the end of that. But he's very good. His pace is second to none. But as you guys know, as Millers fans know, it's keeping him on the pitch, isn't it? That's always probably what's going to hold him back, or you know, not allow him to perhaps go on and fulfill the potential he's got. But he's a very, very good player when fit.
When fit, yes, absolutely. Is there any other players? Who else should we be watching out for? I saw you had a red card on Wednesday. Is that going to be a big impact?
Probably be a big impact to how big Dan Scarr's Christmas dinner is this year. He might be able to have a few more roast potatoes this year. We rotate our centre halves anyway, so I don't think it will be a massive issue. Julio Pleguezelo came in last night, who played for FC20 in the Europa League last year, and I think in his him and Lewis Gibson attributed 22 or 23 clearances alone or something in that game against QPR. So he'll probably start alongside him. But yeah, there's a few to pick out. Obviously, the obvious one is Morgan Whittaker, top of most metrics and data charts at the moment for goals and assists and contributions, etc. Ryan Hardy's just coming back to fitness as well. top goals, or was top goal scorer until Whittaker took over, I think. And then there's just a couple of other players to note. Lewis Gibson, who'll be at the back, number 17, third game of the season. On our Green and White podcast, I came out with a claim he's the best centre half I've ever seen play for Argyle. So I'm sort of having to live by the sword with what I've said by him. But he's, he very rarely puts a foot wrong. And the other one I want to pick out is Brendan Galloway, who is a little bit like Mikael Miller. That he is a role. I'm going to use one of those cliches that I think was going around on Twitter a few months ago. That he's a Rolls Royce of a player. The only problem is the engine doesn't always turn on. Him and Mikael Miller have, I think they have their own ward in our medical department. Bless them. They play the same position as well at left back. But he's got so much ability, Brendan Galloway. It is just a simple case of keeping him on the pitch. A little story, he played against Stoke. He played for the first time in 8-9 months against Stoke. Putting a man of the match-esque performance in just 75 minutes against them. And he was asked by the local journalist after the game, what can the medical team do to keep Mikael Miller on the pitch? And Schumacher just replied with a smile on his face and just said, say their prayers. He was man of the match again at QPR last night. So, it's always the thing. You've got to make sure he's okay the next day. Whether or not this game comes a bit too quickly for him on Saturday, I'm not sure, because obviously there's a game every 3 or 4 days now, isn't there, for the next 2-3 weeks. So for him, it's a nightmare period. But if he starts, he's definitely one who will probably catch your eye just about how silky he is as a ball playing defender.
Brill. Let's finish on a prediction. What do you reckon? How's the score? Your home form being as it is and our away record being as it is, it should be a banker home win, shouldn't it?
Hate that term. Absolutely hate it. Although I was telling everyone that Leicester was a banker home win last week. It's a tricky one, this, because I just want to stress I have an enormous amount of respect for Liam Richardson because of the job he did at Wigan Athletic. I mean, in all the you couldn't have asked for a worse set of circumstances, and he did an unbelievable job there. And he always made them a really tough team to play against. So I think in time, obviously it's not quite your Neil Warnock-esque firefighter role that perhaps a lot of people were looking at Rotherham getting in. I mean, I personally had Michael Duff nailed on for the job as soon as he was kicked out from Swansea. I thought that might have been a really good fit. But I like Richardson. Obviously, he's not going to have a great amount of time in between games at the moment to put his stamp on things. I mean, our home form at the moment is pretty good. One thing there will be is goals. There's always goals in games at Home Park. And the way we purred in the first 20 minutes with 11 men last night, it looked like we could have got an absolute bucket full at QPR. They just couldn't get out. So if we can manage to keep 11 players on the pitch and not have any of our decent players get an injury, I'd like to think, at least a 2-0. I wouldn't be surprised if Rotherham managed to nick one, just because we aren't, we're not watertight at the back. But with that in mind, I'll go 3-1 Argyle, just as I say, because we're not totally watertight. But the one thing we do have is an unbelievable threat going forward. So particularly at home, 3-1 Argyle. Be partisan. Why not?
Why not? Why not? Thank you very much. I will put the links to Argyle Life in the show notes if anyone wants to check out that. Do so. Get some more Argyle stuff. Thank you, Joe, for being with us tonight, mate. Appreciate it.
Cheers, Matt. No problem,
thank you, everybody who's watched, subscribed, and all that kind of stuff. And we'll see you all next time. Up the Millers.